If I mentioned laceless football boots, I would bet that a lot of people watching this video would picture this, the 2016 Adidas Ace 16 Plus Purecontrol, the original laceless boot. But it's not actually the original laceless boot because 10 years before the Purecontrol, Lotto put out this, the Zhero Gravity. Zero with an H for some reason. Is there actually a reason for the H? I legitimately don't know. What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com bringing you a video today to talk about something very exciting in the world of laceless football boots, and that is the return of laceless football boots from the creators of the laceless football boot, that brand being Lotto, and that boot being the Lotto Solista Gravity, which admittedly does look a lot like the current Adidas Predator. Now keep in mind that while these boots were just unveiled, they're not technically going to be available until fall 2019, but as soon as they do become available, expect me to do a review on the channel. And Lotto, if you happen to be watching this video and you want to sort me out with an early pair to review, that would be incredible, please and thank you. However, in the meantime, I figured I would take this opportunity to discuss the actual history of laceless football boots. And while Adidas is definitely dominant in this particular category right now, because the OGs of laceless football boots are making a comeback in this specific category, is it possible that Lotto could really give Adidas a run for their money? Because nobody really seems to be going after them with laceless football boots. By the way, if you guys do end up enjoying this one and perhaps would like to see more boot history videos on the channel, don't forget to support this one with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time and don't want to miss out on future content from me, be sure to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification so you get notified when the next new video goes live. Now, I've mentioned this on the channel before, but Lotto really was a heavy hitter in the football boot industry going back to the late 90s and early 2000s. You don't really think of brands outside of Nike, Adidas, or Puma really innovating in the football boot industry, but Lotto really was an industry leader when it came to new tech, new ideas, new concepts, and they were making legitimately good product. Unfortunately, they just didn't really have the marketing budget that big brands like Nike and Adidas and Puma had, which is kind of why they ended up falling behind. And the laceless concept that they introduced in 2006 didn't really catch on and kind of was a fail for the brand. So what I'm holding right here is the Lotto Zhero Gravity. It came out in 2006 and it is the first ever laceless football boot, bearing a retail price of $300, which was crazy for a pair of boots in 2006. Now that seems to be kind of the norm. However, being that it introduced such a wild concept and it was coming from a brand like Lotto that in 2006 had dipped in popularity pretty significantly, it's just not one of those boots that a lot of people really gave a fair chance. And I would say rightfully so, even though, credit to Lotto, this was actually not the worst laceless football boot that I've ever worn. I'd actually go as far as saying that this is probably the best lockdown you can get from any laceless football boot ever. And the reason why the lockdown is so good is because they're almost impossible to put on or take off. So unlike the laceless boots that have been popularized by Adidas that feature knitted uppers and typically stretchy materials, the upper of the Lotto Zhero Gravity with its laceless design combines synthetic as well as just straight up rubber, and a pretty thick layer of rubber as well, as you can see by the edges. The rubber spanning pretty much the entire top of the foot all the way to the tip of the toe, and then also this little tab here on the back that was designed to basically lock your heel in place, which it did pretty effectively given that these fit you properly, and that really was the key. Unlike the knitted laceless boots that we have now that kind of stretch to the shape of your foot, these really don't have much stretch at all. Yes, this is rubber, but there really is no give to this, which is why once you actually got them on your feet, if they fit your feet perfectly, the lockdown was actually very good. I'm sure there's gonna be people down below in the comments, the couple of people that did have them actually really liked the Lotto Zhero Gravity, but a lot of stores, because stores were still very popular back in 2006, you would go to the store and try these on. The only problem is you couldn't actually get them on your feet. So at that point, trying to sell $300 football boots to somebody that couldn't even get them on in the store was a very difficult sell. This sounds like a little bit of an exaggeration, but trust me when I say that it's not. The rubber material here has a very grippy finish to it. So when you try to put these on while wearing socks, which I would hope that you're trying to wear socks, the rubber actually grips the edges of the sock, and because the opening is so small and there's really no stretch to the opening, when you're trying to jam your foot in, it was actually very, very common for people to rip their socks while trying to put on the Lotto Zhero Gravity. They did, however, include a shoehorn in the box, but it wasn't really much help. And the boots in general, as you can see by the general shape, had a very low volume fit. So it was a tight fitting boot for almost anyone, which was by design. Another interesting design choice is that they included two sets of insoles, which we typically see these days to have a lightweight insole and a comfort insole. These were two separate insoles for the sake of fit. The regular insole, which was pretty much exactly as you'd expect, a regular insole, regular thickness with some extra foam at the bottom for the sake of underfoot cushioning and general comfort, and then what they called an S-fit insole, which basically stood for slim fit, I believe, and that's if you had a slightly slimmer foot and you need to fill in more volume because the boots didn't really stretch all that much. It was the same insole with slightly thicker foam and then even thicker foam here on the bottom to just fill up more volume inside of the boots. There's actually a little chart on the insole bag that explains the whole volume thing with the insoles. So even though the original laceless Zhero Gravity wasn't very successful, Lotto was not going to give up on the laceless concept, which is when they came out with this, the Lotto Zhero Gravity Ultra, the first major redesign for their laceless concept, which you can see side by side. It's still laceless, but they drastically changed the overall shape, making them wider and definitely upping the volume, making the boots easier to put on, but still more difficult to put on than any other football boot that you could buy. In general, I would say the Zhero Gravity Ultra was just a worse version of the laceless boot. The first time around was definitely their best effort. The synthetic was a lot more plasticky and just thicker this time around, didn't feel quite as nice. And you can see that they had redesigned the laceless system in that most of the material across the top of the foot was actually the material of the upper rather than it just being straight rubber. Although I kind of just preferred the look and feel of the straight rubber in general. Still a major part of their design though, and you still maintain the rubber at the back, although you can see it dip down pretty much all the way back, which did allow for a little bit more stretch when putting the boots on. So these weren't quite as bad, but you could still very easily rip your socks. And again, because there really is no stretch to this material whatsoever, it's basically just a predetermined shape. If your foot didn't perfectly match the boots, you were gonna have issues with fit, and you were definitely gonna have issues with just general lockdown and comfort. The Ultra also featured the famous twist and go spinny stud. The insole system for having a better fit also changed a little bit in that the insole was now a mesh liner with a single layer of foam, but then instead of giving you a second insole, they actually just gave you basically a spacer. So this looks like an insole, but it's made from this very dense foam with really no compression to it whatsoever. It would just add thickness underneath your foot. So you would put this in the shoe, then put the insole on top, and that would decrease some of the volume if you had a slightly slimmer foot for a better overall fit. However, just like the original Zhero Gravity, the Zhero Gravity Ultra was also very unsuccessful, and it would be followed up by the Zhero Gravity 100 and the Zhero Gravity 2-100, which were basically just slight refreshes with changes to the synthetic material as well as the removal of the very unpopular twist and go stud. Unfortunately for Lotto, they just had too many new ideas that maybe were a little bit ahead of their time. Had they done this maybe 3 or 4 years later with some of the new technology that would be introduced into the industry, this would have caught on a lot sooner. But back in 2006, when they first introduced it, people just weren't into it. It has now been 13 years since the original Lotto Zhero Gravity, and it seemed like Lotto had given up on the laceless concept, now taken over by Adidas. But it looks like with the Lotto Solista Gravity that they are actually going to give this another try, which I'm personally very excited about because it does look so different than what they had done before. But at the same time, there is also something very special about the OG laceless boot in my opinion, and I'd like to see a combination of what they did with this as well as what laceless boots have become to more or less create the ultimate laceless boot, if you want to call it that. So just based on the couple of pictures that Lotto has put out for these upcoming laceless boots, it looks to be a combination of a bunch of different products that currently exist all in one design. The overall shape of the boot and just general look of it reminds me a lot, like I mentioned at the start of this video, of the Laceless Predator boots, either the Predator 18 Plus or 19 Plus, because they are effectively the exact same thing, where very clearly the laceless system, the part across the top of the foot where laces would normally be, is made out of some kind of knitted material that does extend into a mid-cut collar. So unlike the laceless boots that they were making once upon a time, these are mid where they used to be lows, which personally I would like to see them be lows, but the whole mid-cut thing does make sense, especially if you're trying to draw as much attention as possible from the younger generation, which has been very receptive to the whole laceless boot thing. And the collar on the boots doesn't really look like an Adidas collar. It reminds me a lot more of the DF collars that we've seen on several Nike boots up until this point. As far as the upper is concerned, obviously it's knitted across the top, but the rest of the upper does not look to be made out of a knitted material. And Lotto hasn't put out any specific tech specs for the boots to this particular point that I've seen. And the upper itself actually reminds me a lot visually to that of the skeletal weave upper that we saw on the X18 Plus from Adidas. I'm not sure if that's exactly how it's going to feel. I expect it to be soft. I expect it to have somewhat of a knitted sensation to it, but obviously the structure on that part of the upper is going to play a huge role in the overall lockdown and I guess effectiveness of the laceless system on this new boot. And then the sole plate and stud pattern looks to be pretty much carried over from what they currently have on the Lotto Maestro and the Lotto Solista that I've actually reviewed on the channel, the Maestro at least, which is a very, very underrated football boot. Another thing that's exciting about this is based on what Lotto has been doing as of late with their top-end models, the price of these Lotto laceless boots, if they're good, which is ultimately what matters, could be a lot lower than the laceless options on offer from the Adidas brand that are all $275 at full retail. Lotto, you can buy their top-end models right now for basically $100. So if we could get a really good quality, top-end quality, laceless football boot that actually performs well for basically a third of the price of what Adidas is charging for their laceless boots, that could be a really appealing option to a lot of people that are into the whole laceless thing. Don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting this Lotto laceless boot to put Adidas out of business with their laceless products. They're always going to be the most popular from this point forward. There's no way Lotto can change that, but it would be nice if there was legitimately an alternative to the laceless technology on offer from the Adidas brand that really seems to be up and down in terms of overall quality. It's good to have different brands doing the same things from the perspective that it pushes all the brands to continually up the bar, but because Adidas currently really doesn't have any competition when it comes to their laceless products, they're pretty much free to do whatever they want, which doesn't always lead to the best possible products. Anyways guys, that's it for my preview of the upcoming laceless boots from Lotto, as well as a history on laceless football boots in general, because while Adidas gets pretty much all the credit for laceless technology, it wasn't really their idea in the first place. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to support it with a like. If you have any questions regarding anything that I talked about in this video, leave it down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. And other than that guys, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one.